everything. So a couple of times in the middle of the night, they had something surround their camp and scare the heck out of them. And what they decided to do was to take these logs with this cable that they had left over from a lumber camp, and they tied these logs around this cluster of trees, so they had a little, almost like a fort that they could go into at night and know that they were safe. And one of the times the guys came up there, this was in 1971, they brought one of these old-fashioned reel-to-reel recorders. And they wanted to record the noises that they were hearing in the camp. Now, if I played these noises for you today and I said, yeah, they were recorded out in the woods, nobody would care. Because of digitalization, we could make anything happen anywhere and make it sound like anything we want. But in 1971, it was different. And they came out of the woods and they submitted these tapes to a couple of audio professors at universities. And they said, we want you to tell us what these are. And these two independent professors said, well, we tested them against every known animal in North America. It's not. It's outside the range of a human voice can make, so it's not human. And they had multiple creatures talking over each other with different voices on the same tape, which is impossible to do in 71, but would have even been complicated today. And they had UFOs flying through camp. They had these rods. They actually looked like a stick you'd have at the end of a broom flying through their camp slowly, but with thought and intelligence. And when we were in there in the camp, nothing happened, but we sat around the campfire, and one of these hunters came forward and was willing to talk. There's actually a book written about this in 71 as well, but it's probably some of the best documented creepy stuff in the woods that's ever happened. And Ron Moorhead, who's a really good friend, is the guy who did the recording of it, and it's called the Sierra Sounds. And when you hear the sounds in the movie, it'll blow your mind. It sounds almost like some type of language, but they're talking maybe 100 times faster than we're talking right now. And they've taken those tapes and they've slowed them down, they've sped them up. They had a cryptolinguist specialist from the Navy even analyze it, and he came out and he said, the way that the words are separated and the intellect and dialect in the words, he goes, you could tell they're words and nouns, verbs and nouns. So it's some really, really interesting audio footage to listen to. So almost within eyesight of where Moorhead's camp was at, there's this turnout off this major two-lane highway, and it's a lookout that looks out over this giant reservoir of nothing but granite. It's like you're almost in Yosemite. There's so much granite. But at this turnout, there's been 3 people that have disappeared over the years, 2 women and 1 man. And yeah, you could fall, but you're going to fall down into these rocks down below, and canines are going to find you. And the place has been searched umpteen dozen times, and these people are never found. And we included it in the movie just because of the proximity and the mystery. And then we even interviewed a reporter from Sonora, California, and he said, yeah, it's a huge mystery, and nobody wants to even talk about it now. In fact, he's one of the rare fishermen that I've ever written about that disappeared. Fishermen are not normally part of that group. Hikers, hunters, but not fishermen for some reason. But he's one of the rare. In fact, he was a Department of Corrections officer in the prison system in California, and he disappeared just like a quarter mile from where these women vanished. And it's definitely a cluster right there. There's 3 people there, and then you go further into the mountains, and that's where this oddity happens at this hunting camp. So Nita Mayo was coming from Nevada into California. She stopped at a local store, bought some items, and she was driving out, and everybody thinks just like you and me on vacation, you're going to have a look at this lookout because it's absolutely gorgeous. And she pulled into the parking lot. Her car's locked, purse is in the car. She's gone. Nobody knows what happened to her. But she vanished. And Patricia Sue Tolhurst lived in Sonora. And people were thinking that she was just going to take a day off and take a look at things that maybe she just doesn't normally have the time to do. And that area, when we were there, is not that busy. There aren't, 10, 15 people driving through there every hour. There's probably one car every couple hours. So it's remote, it's lonely, but the view is a 10 plus. You see, in the States, contrary than in Canada, we can carry pistols. And I would say at least 50% of the people on the trails in the United States where I'm at are all carrying guns. And we'd be having some dead guys out there on the trail if that was occurring. And even almost all the women I know, when they go out on the weekends trail hiking, they all carry guns, pistols. And if that was occurring, the professional trackers that are brought to the scene, these guys, they're miracle workers. They track anything leaving there. And there's no tracks ever leaving these scenes. That'd be another case where if somebody was going to take somebody forcibly and you were going to, let's say, carry somebody, trying to carry somebody 100 pounds any distance at all is not an easy feat, even if you're in good shape. I can't even imagine it. It must be off the charts. So I had written about some cases in Canada in my previous books. This is the 9th book in the Missing 411 series. And I knew that Canada had the same sort of strangeness in the cases that we had in the States. Now, I've written about 11 countries that have cases that match what we're talking about. And in order, the countries with the most is U.S., Canada, UK, and Australia. And the weirdness is that MUFON comes out with a monthly list of the top countries with UFO sightings, and those 4 are always in the top 5, which is kind of odd. But Canada, I know a lot about Canada. I've been to the Yukon, Northwest Territory, Alberta, British Columbia, Nova Scotia. I've been around your great country a lot, and I love it. And it offers some things that we don't see in the States. Namely, you can walk out of Vancouver, and in 20 minutes, you could be in the wild and see a grizzly bear. And I don't think there's any place in the States that has a city the size of Vancouver where you can step out and see that. So it's big intrigue. But I started to pay attention to the greater Vancouver area years ago because there were some strange disappearances there that I knew about. And I said, okay, I'm going to spend a year on this and just see what I can find. And just the more I focused on Vancouver Island and the greater Vancouver, North Vancouver, Garibaldi Provincial Park, going kind of an arc circle going all the way over to Penticton and Kelowna, Kamloops, that area has so many people that have disappeared and never been found. It's very odd. So, I've never done this before, but in that book, Missing 411 Canada, I included a 24 by 36 inch map. I've never put a map in a book before, but it's important because this map shows British Columbia and that area that I just spoke about. And then in the top right corner of the map is a close-up of Greater Vancouver. Now, when I talk to you about these, it's hard to visualize how many people are missing if you can't put it on a map and look at it. To me, it's like a crime scene, and I'm looking to see where these crimes are happening. And son of a gun, if there aren't these clusters of disappearances in your country, just like there are in our country. And on the island, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 people that have never been found. And there's little clusters there. In the Strait of the Juan de Fuca, that's the piece of water between Vancouver Island and the Olympic Peninsula in Washington. You can't see this on the map, but I talk about it at conferences. There's a series of boys, young men, that are missing on Vancouver Island. And on the Olympic Peninsula, there's a series of boys on the coast of the Olympic Peninsula that have disappeared. What separates Vancouver Island from the Olympic Peninsula? The Strait of the Juan de Fuca. It's just a very, very odd coincidence. This little strait, and we have disappearances on both sides. Like I was saying, water. And then when you look at the inset in the top right corner of the map that has the city of Vancouver, there's somebody missing out by UBC. There's two people missing north of Horseshoe Bay. There's two people missing, just coincidentally. Two of the only women in the area are missing right in the Lynn Valley, never been found. And then as you go further north, there's a whole cluster of missing people. So when I start a story, first, Clancy O'Brien, he's 9 years old, happened August 20th, 66. And right below that header, I list some points that are profile points to this story. And to this story, the first profile point is berries. Second one is point of separation. That means when you're with somebody and you're no longer with them, you walk around the corner, that's a point of separation, and things tend to happen then. And water and canines. So there's 4 on these. Clancy and his parents lived in Vancouver. His father was a teamster. And the family decided to take a vacation, and they drove 30 miles north of Clinton and approximately 200 miles north of their residence to Green Lake. And on August 20, 66, the family went to visit a friend who was a rancher just outside of Green Lake Provincial Park. And they were having a picnic at the ranch with the ranchers and their friends. And when Clancy left to go get some hot dogs for himself and his friends that were in the cabin just not too far from where they were having the picnic. But Clancy got out of view, didn't return. Parents asked where he went. They said he went to the cabin. Parents got up, went to the cabin, didn't see him. And now all of a sudden everyone's pretty frantic. And everybody stops eating. Everyone starts combing the ranch. And the rancher decides to call RCMP. First RCMP on the scene says, wow, this could be difficult because it's a pretty big area. He calls for more assistance. And within hours, they had 150 locals and RCMP and firefighters looking for the boy. Within a day, there were 25 equestrians, 3 helicopters, multiple tracking dogs, and 250 volunteers that were looking through the area. Well, the Teamsters on the second day heard about this. They filled 5 buses with Teamsters. They shut down part of Vancouver, and 250 Teamsters joined the search. Now, articles at the time stated that the boy couldn't have starved in the area, and they weren't worried about him not eating because all the berry bushes in this area were ripe. Now, in Missing 411 Eastern U.S., I wrote an entire chapter about missing berry pickers. So when I read this, it's interesting, Dave, the way you say everyone looks at it from their own educated perspective. I saw this and I thought, wow, berries are ripe. That's interesting. So the search for Clancy lasted 13 days, which for 1966 was a long search. Normally in 66 they would last 5 days. So they gave this a big push. The RCMP said that they thought they had found small tracks several hundred yards from where he was last seen, and this was on the 4th and 5th day. They put the canines on it. Canines showed no interest, so they disregarded it. Nothing related to Clancy was ever found. Search and rescue manuals state that a 9-year-old boy will be found 95% of the time in a radius of 4.5 miles from the place they were last seen. So that's where 99% of this effort was focused. And what the perspective I want people to think about, a 9-year-old boy is going to a picnic. He's hungry. He's going to go get some hot dogs. That kid is going to have a one-track mind. Get the hot dogs, get them on the barbecue, and let's start eating. So any thought that he wandered away voluntarily